School of Public Health. It was called the NPLI, National Preparedness Leadership Institute. It's a very, at the time, was a kind of rarefied air. It was out of a grant that was formed after 9/11 to form meta leaders. And I was one of a small group of people who went through that program, but I don't have a master's from Harvard.
Well, you say Harvard and you say public health, and then I wonder, like, why are you on our side? Why are you not hanging out with Peter Hotez? So what happened?
No,
what happened to what? How did you make that?
You are exactly
right call.
You are exactly right. Most people, Mary, in public health have really lost their way. It is the mandate of public health to consider not just the impact of any particular mitigation scheme, whether it's a vaccination program or a lockdown or whatever it is. We are supposed to consider the impact of that not just on the individual, but on the entire population. Which means if you look at, for example, what happened during COVID, you hear public health people who do have masters in public health, like Peter Hotez, saying things that are idiotic, like if we can just save one life, if we can just save one child. No, I'm sorry. That is not the job of public health. Public health is required to take a look at and consider the impact on everyone. And that doesn't just mean physical health. It means mental health, financial health, spiritual health. And they dropped the ball massively during COVID. They destroyed the there's no such thing as, protecting, quarantining the many to protect the few. You quarantine the few to protect the many. They have lost these public health, quote, experts, need to go back to be mediated. They have lost their way. And I am an outlier. I'm sort of persona non grata without question at Harvard. They want nothing to do with me. They would love to sort of completely eschew their relationship with me because I did not fall in line at all. I've been a vocal opponent of much of what they've said. I've been very, very critical of what they've done. But unfortunately, so many people in public health have lost their way. They've lost their mandate, and they really need to go back to school.
Yeah, one thing you say that I love is healthcare is not a team sport, right? That we don't treat somebody else to treat the other person. We have to treat people as individuals. And but I'm curious, with the pandemic, like, did you get it from the very start? From what I recall, you did. You never caved to all the sickness. Is that right?
No, I was truly one of the first people. It was the end of January 2020, the very when I became aware that there was a, quote, novel upper respiratory virus, a novel coronavirus. Very, very early on, I smelled. I'm not a geneticist, but I do understand how to read genetic coding. And it was very clear from the beginning, second week of February, that this was a man-made lab manipulated virus. So there was no question about it. It clearly, did not come out of the wet lab. Furthermore, the response that we were getting right out of the box from public health, quote, experts was absolutely bizarre and clearly indicative that there was something else going on. The idea or suggesting, for example, face masks for a respiratory virus. I'm saying, you got to be kidding. I mean, did you not go to virology class? Everybody knows that face masks do virtually nothing to stop the spread of a respiratory virus. We knew within the first weeks that children were at such a de minimis risk from this virus as to be fundamentally zero. So the idea that they were talking about, protecting children, clearly a red flag. Then they started talking about where it became, and so I was out posting all this stuff. I got kicked off Twitter. My first Twitter timeout was in the first week of February of 2020. Before saying that this was a man-made virus, and I got put in timeout first for a day, and then for a week, and then for a month. It was very clear. Furthermore, you and I both know that prior to COVID, debate amongst physicians, amongst scientists, robust, vigorous, respectful, but robust debate was a cornerstone of medicine. It's what you and I grew up on. Every people might not know this. We had, surgeons have a monthly meeting in the hospital called M&M, Morbidity and Mortality, where we go behind closed doors with all of our colleagues. You review cases that didn't go well, and you duke it out. You literally sort of, argue it out. Why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? Did you consider this? What about that? And that's how we trained, and that was a cornerstone of medicine. All of the sudden, I'm getting censored on social media. People are, saying I am getting threatened by my medical boards, saying you can't say that. Not for things I did, by the way, with patients, but for things that I said on the radio or on television, on media. So I had to defend myself 7 times to the medical boards where I hold medical licenses during the early years of the pandemic, again, having nothing to do with something I did with a patient, having only to do with the opinions I was stating. So I knew early on this was, and decided, I follow the military adage, which is, you always take the most flack when you are directly over the target. And I knew that clearly, I was correct. They weren't trying to censor me because I was wrong. They were trying to censor me because I was right.
Exactly. I can relate completely. And you got a little trouble with the medical board, right?
I did. Oh, I did. I had, as I said, 7 different times to defend myself. It's just, I think, again, something that your listeners should understand is that medicine is one of the only times, in really in our judicial system, as it were, where you are not even allowed to necessarily know your accuser. People can anonymously submit a complaint against you. Had nothing to do, in all 7 of my cases, nothing to do with treatment of a patient. It was somebody who heard me on the radio or who read a post that I made, and then submits a complaint to the medical board saying Dr. Victory should lose her medical license because she said blank. And you, as a physician, I've got a very busy full-time job. You have 30 days to mount a response, to come to your own defense, to provide all of the required documents and everything. It's absolutely debilitating. It's financially overwhelming. It's emotionally exhausting. And each time I was successful, but nobody gives you that time back. Nobody pays you back for the amount of income that you lost or the amount that you spent on legal fees. It is absolutely, and so really it is a way to control people, because believe me, my colleagues, I'm sure many of them saw what was happening and said, well, God, I don't want that to happen to me. So I'll just, stay in my lane, keep my mouth shut, toe the line, repeat the subscribed narrative, vaccines are safe and effective. Get yours today. And I wasn't willing to do it. Right or wrong, I've been a heat-seeking missile my entire career. And I said from the beginning, they may take me down, but I will end up on the right side of history. I know I'm right. I am standing my ground. And you and I both have been independent of what harms the medical board may still be doing. You and I know there's no question in anybody's mind that we are on the right side of history, and we always were.
Amen. Yeah, I guess you have